Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. In the days following Operation Sindoor, India dispatched 7 all-party delegations across continents to convey to the world India's message of zero tolerance against terrorism and its new doctrine in dealing with terror attacks as an act of war in future. So over the past several days, our delegates, consisting of political leaders cutting across party lines and experienced diplomats, have travelled to different parts of the world. From Washington to Paris, Tokyo to Johannesburg, India's swift and calibrated action against terrorists has been applauded, and its long-standing concerns on cross-border terrorism have found deep resonance. In a world that's still struggling to define terrorism, India's voice is finally cutting through that we are firm, united and unapologetic about how we deal with terrorists and those harbouring and nurturing them. So is this the beginning of a more confident and assertive Indian diplomacy? Through this unprecedented diplomatic outreach, has India turned the global tide against the narrative spun by the state sponsors of terror, that is Pakistan? We'll get perspectives on this and much more from an illustrious panel. I'm delighted to welcome on this broadcast Mr. Shashank Mani, Member of Parliament from the BJP. He is part of the delegation sent to the US, Panama, Guyana, Brazil and Colombia. Mr. Shashank Mani, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to Sansad TV. Really appreciate you joining us on the program despite the time difference, sir. We also have with us former Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ambassador, glad to have you with us on this telecast. And Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, he's a foreign affairs expert. Professor, always a delight to have you with us on Sansad TV. Mr. Shashank Mani, allow me to begin the program with you since you're part of a crucial all-party delegation to the US, Panama, Guyana, Brazil and Colombia. Talk to us and our viewers about what the core message has been that you conveyed to the countries that you visited so far, and also how has the response been, sir?
Firstly, thank you for having me on the channel. The core message is one of unity, one that all across all party lines, across different parts of the country, there are 7 states represented in our delegation, which is touring the Americas. There is unanimity in our solid response to terror, which we have been suffering for many years. There are 3 parts to the message. First is educating the audience that this is not a new phenomenon. It has been inflicted on us for a number of years. And it is only after Pakistan has refused to cooperate and has refused to relent that we've had to do what we had to do. Second is explaining Operation Sindoor in some detail so that people understand the background behind it, and also make sure that they understand why this action was taken. We also go into the details of why this whole escalation started off when 26 innocent civilians were killed in cold blood, and how the terrorists wanted to send a message of division across the country, which India thankfully did not respond, and we came back as unity. And the final message is that this new resolve of India that should something like this happen again, we will not hesitate to strike back. Of course, it will have to be proportionate. We've always had something which talks about taking out terrorism rather than anything viscerally against Pakistan. But the message that the Prime Minister and our establishment has also delivered, that the backers of terrorism will also not be left behind in case they do not abjure terrorism. So these are 3 broad sub-messages, and the response has been tremendous. I think everywhere we have gone, there has been wide acceptance of the role of India as a peaceful nation. It's a desire to rise peacefully, and this constant niggling which terrorism puts to it. And also, we've tried to make the point at 9/11, a memorial, which is the first stop that we all made. Well, this is not just an Indian phenomena. We often forget, especially the West forgets, that this is a global phenomena. And I think the fight against terrorism is not just an Indian fight, it's a global fight. And also in Colombia yesterday, when we did the press conference, this came out very clearly. Colombia itself has suffered from terrorism for a number of years. So there was a very empathetic response from those who were listening to our story.
Absolutely. And what's been also commendable, what everybody back home has been appreciative of, Mr. Shashank Mani, is the multi-party nature of this delegation alongside the core message that you're conveying to different parts of the world. Has this multi-party nature of the delegation been noticed, and how significant or how effective has this political unity been in sending out a more credible and a firm message that India wants to send to a global platform?
Very, very positive. Both, I think, globally, in the Americas, where we are touring, in the other countries where the others are touring, but also, I think, to a certain extent at home. I think this show of unity is important so that even our own people are right behind it. And I know the whole nation is behind it. I know it from Deoria when I was there just before coming for this tour. I understood the kind of strong message that our citizens had of unity, not across any caste, class, religious lines, but nation first. And I think that's what this representation, this tour represents. For instance, the leader of our delegation is an opposition leader, Shashi Tharoor. There are two members of parliament from BJP. There is one from a regional party. There are two from other parties, and they're also representing 7 different states. So this idea that India is one in the face of this dastardly attack in Pahalgam, that the response was very proportionate and appropriate, and also that this is something that the whole of nation will not relent till we make sure that this scourge of terrorism goes away in India, and hopefully taking a lead from India from the world.
Certainly. Ambassador, from a diplomatic perspective, does this outreach mark a new era in Indian diplomacy post Operation Sindoor, one which you think is more assertive and more firm in nature?
Oh, definitely. I think that, to use our Prime Minister's words, this is indeed the new normal. And I think that the way in which the response to the dastardly attack in Pahalgam has been coordinated, the national unity that has been on display after a very long time. And I think it is really remarkable the way in which all the different political parties have come together in making these delegations and in participating actively in the delegations. We can see from all the media reports that we're seeing across India a very wide coverage of the delegations, talks all over the world in different countries, including in USA and Latin America and others, that there is a responsiveness from the people. And I think the message of unity is important to bring about this responsiveness. But I think it's also important that all the multiple parties who have gone into each delegation, as we are seeing, they also have got this feedback that how they appreciate that the world will value India's unity and India's unity on global terrorism and on terrorism in India. The message that we are conveying that it will be considered an act of war and there will be a strong response each time it happens. At this time, we have kept the Indus Waters treaties in abeyance and we have been very effective in giving the response on May 7th and May 10th, destroying the terrorist infrastructure and destroying the Air Force bases. The show of strength, but show of restraint. Strategic restraint. We did not carry it beyond 10th of May, the attacks on the Air Force bases, and then immediately the Pakistanis came and asked for a ceasefire, which we have immediately accepted. So I think the value of this delegation within India, the value of the delegation outside to the world, and the continuing unity, which I hope we'll see on this issue of terrorism, when elections happen, everybody fights their own battle. But on issues like terrorism, this show of unity has to be carried forward. And I think it's a very, very good start that we have sent these delegations and they have received such a good and positive response. I think it's remarkable to see India's head held high and India becomes a natural leader in this global fight against terrorism. As you said yourself, even definition of terrorism sometimes becomes a problem. But this search for unity, this has now begun. And I think it's a new era of India's search for unity on terrorism and India's leading of the fight against terrorism globally and getting a response. And I'm sure we can ultimately back this up with the Global Convention Against Terrorism that we have been working for so many years.
Professor, let me bring you in here. India has historically been somewhat conservative in its global communications. Whereas if you look at Pakistan, for decades, we've seen how the country has tried to paint itself as the victim globally. Now, do you see this current global outreach as India's strongest pushback yet in terms of the narrative war against terrorism?
Yeah, Teena, people have lots of misunderstandings about this whole problem, right? I mean, there is this notion that India and Pakistan are fighting over Kashmir and that it's a bilateral dispute. I mean, around the world, there has been this notion that, they've fought many wars against each other and whatever happens, they tended to see it in terms of a bilateral dispute over a territory, which is an unfinished business of the partition of India. So now you see what we are doing through these terror-focused outreach, global outreach through our members of parliament and all these multi-party delegations to 32 countries is actually shaping or reshaping the narrative to get everyone to pay attention to the fundamental issue, which is religious extremism, hatred, fundamentalism, and terrorism. And actually, as External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar has said, there is nothing to talk really in terms of Kashmir except the unfinished part, which is the taking of the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So, what we are now trying to do is to put the laser focus on the problem of terrorism. And as esteemed Shashank was saying also, that now we are trying to also emote with other countries which have also faced similar problems and get them to see it from their lenses. So that there is an empathy and a deeper understanding of Indian point of view. And I think increasingly people are being vexed because they are facing similar issues and threats in their own countries and in their neighborhoods around the world. So to be able to, so if the terrorists are using the concept of a ummah or a global community of aggrieved Muslims who have to all fight a holy war, we are using the concept of a counter-terrorism coalition building exercise. We are trying to do that through these delegations, and to sustain that momentum, we'll have to keep doing it not just immediately after Operation Sindoor, but in an extended way over years, because that is how we create that counter movement, counter mobilization at the global level. Because generally countries tend to think of these problems from their narrow lenses, like what are the threats I face? What is my national security challenge? Why should I worry about what India is facing 10,000 miles away? So what we are saying is you should worry because your threat and my threat are effectively linked to each other.
Absolutely.
Because of global jihadi menace. So I think we are now shining greater light upon it. It's not just about our diplomat, like we have embassies and high commissions in all these countries where the delegations are going and they are facilitating the visits. But it's not just enough for government to government communication. Our groups are meeting a wide cross section of elites as well as influential opinion makers in these countries, impressing upon them the reality of what has happened in Pahalgam and what has been happening in Kashmir since the 1980s. So I think the narrative building that was missing, and which had, like you said, the Pakistanis had stolen a march over us through crafty and clever lies. Now we are countering them with strategic truth. They had clever lies, and now we are doing strategic truth through this global outreach.
Okay, I'll taking on from the point that you made, Mr. Shashank Mani, I'll come to you. The fact that historically each time there's been a conflict, there has been solidarity towards India, but each time it's also been treated as a bilateral problem, something that Professor Chaulia highlighted. So this time it's an unprecedented outreach by Indian delegations. How are we clarifying to the world that it's not a bilateral problem? It's about terrorism, which is a global scourge and which the world must unite against. So what is the sense that you are getting now on India's new doctrine that any future terror attack will be treated as an act of war in terms of getting international legitimacy or understanding of the kind that India wants?
So firstly, I think in terms of relationships between the two countries, any outside meditation is not encouraged by us. We will sort it out at various different levels. But yes, the phenomena of terrorism across the border is not just an Indian problem, is a key part of our message to generate that empathy that was talked about before. And also, I would argue that this empathy is not just being generated with the establishment or those who in power. This is also being generated through reach out to other senators, other legislators across party lines. It's also being done through think tanks, through the press. Indeed, it's also been done. One of the surprising things that we have discovered in the last three nations that we visited is the tremendous power of our own diaspora. For instance, Guyana, as you know, has got had 236,000 immigrants, mostly actually from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, who had gone there. And their response and their voice in that Guianan society was a major force to convince and make the case against terrorism there. So I think it's not just across this point about that terrorism is international. Ours is only one case. It's also this point that it has to be explained to society at large, which is why a parliamentary delegation does it better. And it is done through an act of coming together across different party lines. So these are 3 or 4 sub-messages. But I'd also say that one other benefit of our visit has been that the role of India in the world in general has been highlighted. We are now the fourth largest or becoming the fourth largest economy. We are growing very fast. Many of these countries are also looking to us in terms of how do we develop their own economy. So what has happened is that while Operation Sindoor is the center of our message, and we are making sure that that lands very nicely, what is also happening is that there are many questions about how India can support countries like Guyana, Colombia, Panama, and as you go to Brazil, have a partnership. And what better way to expand that relationship than having a group of parliamentarians across party lines discussing across society, not just to the administration, but across society, how various other angles, people to people, opposition, the current government can be done. So in some ways, it has become a multi-pronged attack, one of which is to say that terrorism has to be addressed and stopped. But the other reason is to say that the reason we must have a peaceful world and a peaceful India is because we have a job at hand. And the job is Viksit Bharat. So we need to make sure that we understand that every country which abjures terrorism, including Pakistan, if it takes care of its terrorist Tikana camps, will do better. And of course, any other country which also supports terrorism will also make sure that it is true to its own citizen by creating a better nation, developing it, and taking it forward with India's help.
Certainly. Ambassador, there's often a gap between sympathy and action in global diplomacy. Do you think this time, looking at the kind of reactions that are coming in post our delegates' visit to various countries, that the global response has gone beyond symbolic support to actual alignment with India's strategic interests, and in this case, a united fight against terrorism?
I think so, definitely. I think the delegations that have been sent abroad are playing a very important role in precisely drawing out this distinction. And I'd like to draw a distinction here because when you say that there's no empathy or lack of it, on Kashmir, we are definitely bilateral. We say that there's no question of any country to talk about Kashmir. It is a bilateral issue. In fact, after the abrogation of Article 370 in August 2019, there is nothing to talk about on Kashmir. It is no longer a global issue or a UN issue, or any issue. We only need to get POJK back, Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir back. This point is very strong and we adhere to this point unequivocally. This is important. But on the terrorism issue, this is the point that terrorism is an act of war. It's an act aimed at destroying the unity of Indian society, at destroying our approach to get economic growth and prosperity, lifting people out of poverty, women's empowerment and all of that. I think this message, the globalization of this message is very necessary because this also gives other people, other countries, all the countries the delegation are visiting, the opportunity to understand this and to know that India remains open for economic cooperation, for helping all these countries, and we're doing it. And so many messages must be coming to the members of the delegation, Shashank Maniji and others, on saying, we need help on this factor or that factor. And when they bring that back to India, it becomes an important role. So India's role as Vishwa Bandhu, as friend of the world, we are helping all the countries. We've helped them during COVID. We had our COVID Maitri vaccine, and now we've got, as our economic growth goes, we are reaching the number 4 position and hopefully soon the number 3 position. We are ready to do business with and friends with all our friends. Do business. This is important. So the delegation, I think, is carrying these multi-messages that we will combat terror. We need the support of the countries to combat terror. We are ready in our role as Vishwa Bandhu. We will continue with our economic cooperation and we want to continue it. That's why we are exercising strategic restraint. And that is why after, when the Pakistan offer came through the DGMO for a ceasefire, we accepted it. Even though Operation Sindoor has not been stopped, it is just on pause. युद्ध विराम नहीं है, स्थगित किया गया है. So I think these messages are very important to convey, and I think with the determination of India against terror, many countries will join in because it helps everybody. And I think the globalization of this fight against terror is very important. At the same time, on the other message, we are strictly bilateral and we remain that way. The Indus Waters Treaty will remain in abeyance until we have verifiable proof that Pakistan is acting against the terror groups, terrorist infrastructure that it has developed on its soil.
Professor, your thoughts on India rising is a key factor behind the kind of response, the positive response that we are seeing from various countries. So while it's heartening to see growing recognition of our concerns on the issue of cross-border terrorism, do you believe that this is also a result of sustained diplomatic groundwork, or also a reflection of India's growing strategic weight? We are now the fourth largest economy in the world.
Yeah, Teena, as you recall from my book, Friends, India's Closest Strategic Partners, I had made the argument that, as a country rises, it becomes far more attractive as a partner because it's not a burden or a problem, but an opportunity for so many countries, right? So the all-party delegations are finding a very receptive red carpet welcome because of this reason, because the groundwork, especially in the Narendra Modi era, the prestige of the country has risen because of high economic growth and the opportunities we are providing to the rest of the world through trade, investment, and supply chains and all these things. So if you see, like, for example, one set of the parliamentarians have gone to Gulf countries. They're covering important Gulf countries. Those kind of relationships, in the past, the Gulf countries used to sympathize with Pakistan on religious grounds. I'm talking of like 20 years ago, right? But now there's a sea change. Most of them have turned around and have come to our corner, and we have been able to negate this this so-called Ummah-based mobilization that I spoke about of religious solidarity. Now people are pragmatic around the world, and they see India as the big opportunity. So definitely those factors, when a country decides on a foreign policy on the matter of terrorism, for example, it's not only the intrinsic merit of the Indian argument vis-a-vis the fake narrative of Pakistan. It's also about what is India giving us, what can Pakistan give us. It's a simple, bean counting strategy of core material interests. And there, it's a no-brainer. India generates so much, chances. It's the world's largest, fastest growing major economy with a huge growing middle class. Well, Pakistan is a failed and failing state under a military dictatorship, de facto dictatorship. So I think people see that, and therefore, overall consideration is also there. It's not only this matter of terrorism. Overall consideration is we should be with India because that is in our core national interests. So that way, we have been able to place the counter-terrorism narrative within the larger framework of, India as the most suitable or desirable partner for most countries. And there it comes through. So we have been able to sell the idea of an India that is moderate, that is open to all, and that is actually, as Shashank was saying, acting in restraint. Despite the extreme provocations, we are not interested in all-out war. We are not at all even, triggering any nuclear war. These were the concerns in the past, that if India-Pakistan escalate, there will be nuclear war. It's a flashpoint and we should stop it. That is how the international community is to look at these matters. Now they're saying, okay, Indians have found a way to deter Pakistan and to raise the cost of terrorism without escalating to all-out war. So I think we have also shown our strategic astuteness, and people know that we are a responsible, rising power that offers infinite opportunities. So that is our USP, and we are maximizing it now.
Certainly. In terms of maximizing the USP, something that comes to mind is also the large number of Indian diaspora, something that Mr. Shashank Mani also spoke about. So let me take one last question from him about how the delegates are engaging with also the diaspora more strategically to amplify this new narrative about zero tolerance policy against terrorism and treating any future terror attack as an act of war. Mr. Shashank Mani.
Yeah, I think the Indian diaspora has characteristics which are similar to India's national characteristics. They are peaceful, they are hardworking, they don't want trouble, but if they get trouble, they respond positively and with strength. And this is the new narrative that Prime Minister Modi has managed to create for India. And as others have said, if you were to look at India 12 years back, before Mr. Modi came and became the Prime Minister, I think it was one of a soft power, always vulnerable, always looking for mercy. Here we are not looking for that. We are looking from a position of strength as the fourth largest economy, the fastest growing large economy, to ask our partners to say, what we want is a peaceful rise. What we want is our citizens rising fast. There is billions of people that we would like to make sure in India are prosperous. And this terrorism is coming in the way of that. Now, coming to your question about the diaspora, similarly, the diaspora has been very, very positive wherever we go. I mean, just so you know, yesterday we were in Panama, and would you believe that for a country which is only 4 million people, there are 15,000 Indians. Many of them assembled for a public program for us next to a beautiful temple. There was a there was a hall. 300 people came there. They had cultural programs for us. They had a huge amount of empathy for what we were doing. Yesterday evening, when we had day before yesterday evening, when we had a program by the Indian High Commission, which was had a very big banner, which is say zero tolerance for terrorism. You could see that local people show up and really empathize with that fact. So I think that the Indian diaspora is playing very, very strong role. And I would say that when we go to United States, we will also see the influence of the Indian diaspora, which is very strong in making the point that we are making in this delegation, that peace is important, but peace with strength is equally important. And we should have zero tolerance for terrorism. And I would say that wherever you go, the characteristics, the qualities, the hardworking nature of Indian diaspora is coming to enhance the brand of India that Mr. Modi has created, Prime Minister Modi has created. So I would say that it's working in tandem. What the state is doing through state power, through enhancing the brand, and of course more has to be done. I am a legislator, so Viksit Bharat is because for the next 22 years we have to work hard to create a great nation. So we are not saying that the task has been done by any means. I'm from the ruling party. At the same time, it has shifted dramatically for the last 10, 15 years. And similarly, diaspora is saying we want to take part in this growth story of India. We want to send our children there. We want to do what we can from here. And both combined together becomes a two-track policy. And this is something which is really helping our delegation where we go. I just add one other thing, that wherever we have gone, we've also garlanded the bust of Mahatma Gandhi. In Guyana, we also went to the place where the Girmitias, those people who came from India, came from. So emotionally, we are not only connecting with the normal Guyanese or the Panamanian or the Colombian or the Brazilian or the US person. We're also connecting with the emotion of the diaspora because they identified with Mahatma Gandhi. They identified with their own journey going forward. And I think it's important that India recognizes their sacrifice and their enormous credibility in these nations.
Absolutely, and the kind of response, Ambassador, that we've been witnessing, it's indicative of the hard work and the reformative measures that have been undertaken in the last few years towards strengthening India, because peace comes with strength. It's something that Mr. Shashank Mani reiterated, and something that works in India's favor. To conclude the show for us, we've set the tone. How do we sustain the momentum? Because we need to carry this forward in order to counter every fake narrative which sort of tries to quell India's stand on the global stage when it comes to cross-border terrorism.
Well, I think I really value what Shashank Maniji has said, and especially about the way in which the diaspora is responding, in addition to all the other political figures they are meeting, because the diaspora is an important bridge for us. You know, they value their origins in India, and by reaching out to them, we are showing them that they are important for us, and so they become a bridge to the other people of that country as well. So this serves many, many purposes, and I think that in carrying forward this initiative, first and foremost, I think we will hear back from our members of parliament. When they come back, they will discuss with the Prime Minister, with the Ministry of External Affairs, about the lessons from these visits, and what is it that the people that they have met at the highest level, what are their expectations from India? Yes. That is one. Second thing, I think this show of unity with all the multi-party delegations from different parts of India joining together and speaking in one voice. I think on these vital issues of national interest, this consensus should be preserved and strengthened, not only within the country but outside the country, because it's very, very valuable. Otherwise, the message that some people like to convey outside, oh, you know, India is divided, etc. But this time it's nothing like that. It's complete unity, and this is sending in itself such an important message which must be preserved and strengthened. So I think that, you know, our ambassadors there are always carrying forward the messages to the people they're interacting with. But when they receive such important visitors from India, their work gets easier, and their work, you know, the response they receive from the local community gives them an idea about how they should continue as well. So, you know, carrying the message forward, you spoke in the beginning, you know, that Pakistan has been doing this kind of nasty messaging all the while. Yes, we chose to keep quiet all this while. We said, oh, no, why should we bother? Let Pakistan go on talking. This was a mistake. I think now that we have corrected the mistake and we have defined our position on terrorism as an act of war, every incident is going to be an act of war, and we will respond strongly, but we will practice strategic restraint because we want our country to continue to grow, and we want our growth to reach out to every corner of the world, to contribute to global growth. And that is why the approach of Vishwa Bandhu, of being a friend to the world, is also a very important message. I think this has been a vitally significant learning experience, and learning the lessons from it, the feedback from it, and continuing further has to go on. Every year, such a delegation should go as and when the issues come up, even on economic growth itself, even on terrorism, even on other aspects, global peace. There's so many issues on which India can take the lead, and I know that we will. It has started with the delegations. It has started very well, and we wish them every success. And we wish them a safe journey back to India, and to tell us all the lessons that they have learned.
Certainly. So there is a lot to learn, and we hope that this will continue in future as well. But with that, we'll have to wrap up the conversation. Time allows me to take up only that much on this edition of Perspective. Thank you once again to all our guests. And Mr. Shashank Mani, wish you well for the remaining part of your trip. Thank you once again for joining us with your perspective. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Professor, for joining us on the program. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.